at OTAs when you were on your honeymoon? What caught your eye?
Just that Eric Watts' name was a thing floating around. Because when the Jets UDFA class, signed, understandably, everybody talked about Leonard Taylor, who was a former 5-star. He was in the first round of mock drafts maybe a year ago. But to me, Watts was more interesting in a certain way where, all right, to put it like this, I had Leonard Taylor 184 on my top 301, Watts 190. And Watts was a Senior Bowl guy. He's a big-bodied edge. He tested well. And when the Jets, Watts became more interesting to me when the Jets moved on from JFM because, as we've often said on this pod, we don't think Clemens is any good. So there's a massive hole on the Jets front right now where you're looking at it and going, okay, Quinnen Williams, we know what he can do, right? I mean, but Quinnen's going to play up and down the interior. Then you look at how they've kind of transformed what their true edge rushers look like, right? Jermaine can play heavy, and Jermaine is pretty heavy. And I know that's been a fun topic of conversation since I've been on. But Hassan Reddick and Will McDonald, they are lean. They are very Gumby-ish kind of players. You like their length, how lean they are, the bend. But they aren't guys that, hey, downs 1 through 3, stick your hand in the dirt and set a hard edge. And you want those guys doing the flashy stuff like rushing the passer. So you just look at who's going to be fair to JFM, he was a dirty work player quite often and a really good one here. And the Jets need a dirty work player to kind of come out of nowhere. And those are guys you should be able to find out of nowhere. You don't go pay guys $20 million in free agency to be a dirty work player. I think Watts can be that guy. I really do. Just because he could play heavy. When you're around 280, you can kind of play the JFM role, kick him inside, kick him outside, keep things simple for him. And I just think of opportunity, right? That's how I look at it. The second thing was that I caught really quick is that they've moved Isaiah Oliver officially to safety, it sounds like, which when they signed Oliver, I thought it was going to be as a safety, despite the fact he traditionally has been a nickel corner his last couple of stops. Oliver was a guy I remember throughout the draft process that there was a lot of qualities about him that made sense as a safety, and I don't think he's been a very effective corner in the NFL. And the Jets, they took Quantez Stiggers, who I think is going to get a legit chance to be a corner. The Jets instead this year have taken their guy of, hey, let's move a corner to safety for the draft. They're doing it through free agency, which is kind of interesting. We'll see how Oliver does in that role. Another room that there's a lot of opportunity if anybody shows anything. So those are the two to me, just because when I look at OTA news, I don't really care too much about reps or what happens in practice or what a guy looks like. I'd rather a guy be in shape than not in shape. But with this Jets team, you don't really worry about this young group. A lot of them honestly live at the facility, even when nothing's going on around there. What I look for is, okay, who's a name that we don't talk about a lot? And there's just a massive opportunity. And it feels like that door is slowly opening for both Watts and Oliver. And I'll be careful with massive opportunity. When I say that, I mean making the roster, but it's still a good step in the right direction for those guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain areas of the roster where there's still windows of opportunity, and the Jets may decide to be patient and give some of these young guys a lot of reps in the summer, see how they look in the preseason, see how they look in joint practices, and then you can make a decision late in camp if you want to add some veterans. There's going to be veterans out there. There's also always the trade market available if they want to be that much more proactive because they're like, you know what? We just don't have enough on the defensive line. We just don't have enough at safety. They don't have to do that right now or in June to improve the roster. They can wait and let these young guys get some of the reps and, figure it out from there. So we're going to see how this shakes out. In camp, again, the Jets are not going to be playing a lot of their seasoned veterans every single day. They're not going to play a ton in the preseason. We don't want to see a ton of Tyron Smith in the summer. We don't want to see a ton of Morgan Moses. We don't want to see a ton of these guys. We want them healthy for the early part of the regular season. So it's going to be a great opportunity.
I don't want to see Breece Hall.
I don't want to see Breece Hall either. I want Breece Hall as fresh. Use all these rookie running backs. You've drafted 6,000 running backs in the past 2 years. Let them get all the reps. Let them battle for the number 2 spot and have Breece be fresh. And we'll get an opportunity to get, extended look at a lot of these players and see if one of them or two of them could grab a meaningful role or a roster spot. Kind of like happened with Gibson and Brownlee last year. Gibson really more so in terms of playing, but they both made the team. So we know we're going to have a couple surprise guys who make the roster and make an impact. And that will be some of the fun stuff to watch in the summer. Of course, it's going to be awesome to have Rodgers back out there, but they're going to, I think, be that much more safe and cautious after what happened last year with everybody. And especially knowing, you're opening it on prime time, then you have this funky schedule with a lot of short weeks and a lot of travel. Like, I just think it's going to be a very UDFA young player heavy training camp and preseason, which is a good thing.
What do you think of the joint practices, though? I was surprised to see they plan on doing them with every team they play in the preseason. I'm not a fan of that at all.
That is odd, and it's a uniquely high volume. And also, these things they always lead to like training camp fights and like.
Well, we think of Carl Lawson against the Packers is what our brains turn to, but even besides that, you're right. They get ugly. I mean, we watch them up close. Everyone's tired. It's hot as hell. People get really pissed, and then the problem is with it too. It is kind of that moment where you've just been hitting each other for a couple weeks and you're tired of it. So you go out, especially the young guys, and I give them credit for this. You go out and see somebody in a different color than you, especially like when they were going at it with the Bucks last year. Like as soon as they saw those red jerseys in practice, it's almost like you crank the knob too much a little bit. It's like a jump, and then somebody gets banged up or someone does something stupid or you're not productive. I'm not anti-joint practice. Listen, I get it, but I just don't need to see it against all three teams. Do it with the Giants who are down the road. In my opinion, I don't know. It feels like at some point, it feels like an old school coach way of like, we don't have a lot of preseason anymore, so let's do this. But I'll be honest with you. I don't want to see Tyron Smith out in those. I don't want to see a lot of Aaron Rodgers out in those. I don't need to see Sauce Gardner go cover some UDFA wide receiver. Like, I just don't give a shit. Like, give it to, you're right. Let's see a lot of Eric Watson, Leonard Taylor out there.
Yeah. That's the time of the year for those guys. And one of the things